Hi everyone, and thanks for being with me today for another feed. It's good that, hopefully a lot of you will join in the conversation today because this is about an opportunity for you to talk about the things that and the issues that I raise. As always, I'd be delighted to have you on board talking about whatever it is that you think is relevant. Today, I'm going to talk about a couple of things. Firstly, Trump. So as I posted something earlier, just talking a bit about what Trump, the meeting between Trump and Albanese, and I do need to confess, it was fabulous. Not because Trump did anything amazing, but I think because Albanese represented himself pretty well, made it look like we were, a nation worth listening to. And I guess the biggest thing was that he had some bargaining chips that he could use to offer Trump. So it is important to be able to dangle in front of Donald Trump something that Donald Trump wants. The man is totally transactional, and if he believes he can make some dough from it or he can benefit the country in any particular way, primarily that means him earning some income from it. So I don't know whether he plans to invest in Australia personally through the Trump organisation, or what he plans to do in terms of the mining and the digging up of rare earths here in Australia. Because at the end of the day, he wants to compete with China, and Australia has provided him with the opportunity to do just that. P.W. Arthur, good to see you on board, mate. Thanks for joining me again. And just remember that I like to think that you can subscribe to my channel, ring the bell for further notifications, do what you need to do. My subscriptions are increasing, which is somewhat of a relief as they didn't for a while. And also, it benefits me if you subscribe to the channel and you ring the bell for further notifications. Remembering that this is an opportunity for you to talk about the things that matter to you, that it is important to be able to have a conversation. And Paul has responded, Albo's done us proud. I couldn't agree with you more, Paul. I think that we need to at least understand, I think, that this could have gone so pear-shaped, that Kevin Rudd could have presented as the major issue, number one. John Lyons' comments to Donald Trump about the amount of money that he's earned since he's been back in power could have been another. And it's worth noting on that particular point that I understand John Lyons was prevented from becoming becoming part of the press when they sat around the table and asked questions of Trump. There's a couple of things about this that have interest me. Number one is the Australian press also did us proud, I have to add, apart from the guy whose name will come to me in a moment, from Sky News, who asked him about the relationship with Rudd, given that Rudd had criticised Trump previously. And that was the only sort of dark moment. But what can you expect from Sky News? You're going to find a way to present some sort of negativity. And I must confess that, well, I'm not confessing anything, quite frankly, not here and not to you. But I do need to say that the reality is that that particular clip about from the Sky News presenter or Sky News journalist, a very loose word, a very loose use of the language, I think, in terms of whether or not he's a journalist or not. But nevertheless, he asked a question around Rudd, and that was the only dark moment. But that was played out, of course, by Sky News. In fact, it almost appears, when you look at the Sky's reporting on this, that nothing happened that was significant. However, something did happen that was significant. Donald Trump proved again that he was an idiot, so that goes without saying. He actually he was asked a whole range of questions. Don't waste your time watching it. I'll tell you what happened. He was asked a range of questions on AUKUS. He was asked about some other involvement with Australia, and it was clear to me, and I don't know whether it's clear to you, that Donald Trump had no idea what they were talking about. I am convinced that 2 weeks ago Trump didn't even know what AUKUS was, and that he said in this particular meeting that, in fact, that he could almost guarantee that we will receive the ships, the submarines, on time. That is bullshit. We're not going to receive those submarines when we want them, and we're actually giving up billions of dollars to the United States without any guarantees that we're going to receive the subs anyway. That be as it is. I've spoken a lot about AUKUS in the past. I think it's an absolute waste of time and money and resources, but nevertheless, that's the decision the Morrison government made and the Albanese government followed suit. So it is amazing to think that Donald Trump had an opportunity to meet with our Prime Minister, and Albo came out of it looking pretty good. In fact, Albo did not make it. He did not act as a sycophant to Trump. The only thing he congratulated Trump on was the peace deal in the Middle East. At which point, of course, Trump had to tell us that he's solved 8 wars, and this will be number 9 or 7. This will be number 8, whatever he lies about. He was able to do that. And he went into, Trump goes in, I don't know why people haven't thought about this in a rational way, but he goes into these moments where he thinks he's in front of his MAGA supporters. And maybe to a large extent he is, in terms of those, Newsmax and Fox News and other right-wing media presenters and also podcasters present him. That he is kind of like, which really frustrates me, is kind of like this, godlike character to them. It is bizarre how they view, like we can look at it, I can look at it, and I think, well, who is this guy? What in the freaking hell is this all about? And see him for who he is. But the MAGA world just doesn't. And so just to highlight that fact, I've been watching the Daily Show with Stewart, and it fascinates me that the way that Trump is often presented. And I tell you what, the Daily Show is a good place to go to get some sort of, humanity, I guess, around what's happening in American politics and how they view Donald Trump. And so they're having a go at Trump because of the No Kings marches and so forth, and whether he was a king. They did this comparison, which is quite funny, about whether he's Jesus or the king. And John asked a whole series of questions in relation to that, which were blatantly obvious, which was Jesus, and it was certainly blatantly obvious, which was Trump. So I'm going to play this little bit of this clip where he's doing this, and he's dressed up looking like he's one of the founding fathers and reading from the Constitution. So I'm going to play this bit because I think this is hilarious, because he plays what some news items or news reporters on the right are saying about Trump. So have a look at this and let me know what you think.
But he's undeniably king adjacent, king-esque, moving for more. He's the imitation crab of kings right now. I can't believe it's not king. And the ironic part about Republicans complaining that he is being dubbed a king is that in their minds, he has already surpassed that title anyway and moved on to a much higher calling.
He's a miracle worker.
Trump just performed an actual miracle before our eyes.
He was saved to do things like he did today.
He's got just a special anointing.
Prophecy, destiny, and divine purpose. President Trump is God's chosen instrument for this moment in time.
I've seen the hand of God on him for a very long time. We're saving Christianity. We're saving God.
Can any of us actually believe that shit? That they are holding Trump up as who could believe in, I don't know, the Christian right amazed me. Like, how can anybody possibly believe that anybody else is so Christ-like, whatever that means, and that Trump, who is been found guilty of a whole host of felonies, is an alleged rapist, or has been declared a rapist by a civil court, who has obviously, and this is what frustrates me the most, He's the most intellectually vacant individual I have ever come across. And I mean that. And I've met quite a few. But politically, this man is so void of any intelligence. One wonders where he gets his ideas from at all. And it's interesting. What I find fascinating is that I wonder, it'd be fascinating to be in a meeting with Trump and some of his supposed advisors, because Trump, under all circumstances, believes that he is the one with all the, he's said this out loud, he's the one with all the information, all the knowledge. He knows all that there is to know about absolutely everything. He's an amazing human being. But we know from just listening to him that that's not the case. And I do need to come back to Albo's meeting with him, because I believe that Albo played him, absolutely played him. And one of the things that I think really stands out to me is that there was not, I reckon, this is a theory, who knows whether it's reality or not, but I reckon that the Australian government chose not to have this meeting with Trump until they had something they could bargain with him. If he had the meeting, say 3 or 4 months ago, before China decided that they were going to limit the export of rare earth materials and going to mess around with computer chips and everything else, before all of that happened, I'm sure we had very little bargaining power at all. But when it came quite obvious that China was going to be able to control this market, or was controlling this market, and could in fact exclude the United States, and particularly when Trump decided that he was going to sort of do a deal with Ukraine so that he could buy their materials with them and then piss off Putin, something he would never do and has chosen not to do. But nevertheless, Australia was in a good position, and Albo knew that. And he's used that position in order to negotiate with Trump so that Trump could walk away. And this is the painful thing. There's a few painful things about this. Number one is, why don't politicians stand up to Trump? Why don't more politicians say you're a dick? Stop doing what you're doing. Why don't they stand up and say, well, these are the things that are of interest to us, and we're going to penalise you in certain areas. For example, let's kick them out of the Pacific. Why not start with that? That there's this effort to be able to have to show Trump something that you can offer. Now I can't remember with Obama or Biden or Clinton anybody ever having to show the Americans what we could offer them that would benefit them so that we could have some favourable outcomes. I can't remember anything. Now, I'm not saying it didn't happen, but I can't remember anything that's just so blatantly obvious. So what is going on with us that we have to be able to do that to him? And, was the meeting that important? Could someone else have signed those documents on the Australians' behalf? Yes, they could have. Was it important at home for Albanese to be seen with Trump? Well, maybe it was, because, he was getting so much pressure from the right wing. Not that matters too much, but there certainly was some pressure from the right wing for Albo to meet up with Trump, and there's a lot of criticism. Now that he's done that matter has been dispensed with. Don't need to worry about that one anymore. Let's just see what happens from this point on. So I guess that was important. But someone else could have done the signature, that is for sure. Albo's been criticised over and over again for his travel. He's travelled a lot since he's been back since this term, and yet no criticism of him flying off to the United States. There was plenty of criticism of his going to other countries, to the UK and to Europe and so forth a few months ago, but no criticism of him doing this particular trip. So I just wonder where all of this is going. I don't know what you think. Is there an opportunity further down the track to make some sort of stand against Trumpism? Because here in Australia, the reality is that we don't give a shit about Trump. In fact, Trump is not a very popular figure here. And there was some talk during this meeting that Trump would come to visit Australia. I bloody well hope not at one level. The other part of me says, come to Australia so we can protest you and let you know what you're really about. And then I was wondering, he can't, when he went to the UK, he hid at Westminster Castle for the time that he was there. They popped him into a carriage and drove him around the property because they could not expose him to the general public. He couldn't go outside. If he came to Australia, would the same thing happen? I don't know whether he'd stay at Kirribilli House and they just set him on the front lawn so he could overlook the Sydney Harbour and the Opera House and the Sydney Harbour Bridge. I don't know if that's what they would do to him, but there's not much that we can offer him that's as elaborate as a gold-coated coach, which is something that Trump would admire and hope that he also could have. And after all, the man would like to be king, so why not? Even if you're wandering around Westminster, why not at least hope that that is for that moment? You are the king. So will you come to Australia? Who knows? Who cares? But he may or may not. Now, I just wanted to have a look at the response in the Guardian around all of this, and they have a title which I think is quite interesting. It is "Diplomatic Triumph or Capitulation." Albanese found Donald Trump in a heavenly mood, but the devil may be in the detail. And I guess this is the issue with a lot of what we see in relation to Trump is that on the surface, like the peace deal, it looks fine. But underneath the surface looms something else that could be quite troubling because we don't understand the detail. One wonders what the detail would possibly look like that could be damaging to Australia, apart from the percentage of minerals that the United States would claim as theirs, I guess, and whether or not the profitability would be there or eaten away by the negotiations with Trump or the administration. Who knows? We don't. So, but why is it even that we have to say and wonder about what the deal actually means? Because is it that basically we can't trust Trump to keep a deal, and we can't trust Trump to do a deal that offers anything that's in our favour? Is this the problem with Trump? I believe it is, but let's wait and see. So, fresh from a tropical holiday, the Australian didn't know he was on a tropical holiday. The bastard! Thank God for that. He deserved it. Let's face it. Caught the US president at his effusive best. He went on to say Anthony Albanese was so pleased about his first meeting with Donald Trump, so chuffed with the overwhelming and somewhat unexpected praise from the president. The Prime Minister joked that he'd use the endorsement in his campaign ads at the next election. That is a joke. We know for certain that will never happen. There's no way in the world. Australians to the tune of 83% don't like Trump. So there's no way in the world that he would do that. So in a way, I guess the way we could look at that is that Albo lied to Trump. So, if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander, I guess. So he lied to Trump anyway. That's obviously unlikely to happen to consider the effective campaign Albanese ran against Dutton by comparing him to Trump, and the Labor left flank already ropeable over what they view as a fawning and shameful capitulation over AUKUS and critical minerals. And they're really saying, I haven't seen any direct comments from the right in relation to that. But the comments show the level of satisfaction the Australian leader would take away from the face-to-face with Trump. Not only was there no disaster or real embarrassment in the unpredictable Trump White House, but almost every single opposition claim that the government had bungled the US relationship was found to be simply hot air. It hasn't happened. That the relationship with the United States, apparently, according to this meeting, is right on track. And it's right on track regardless of the fact that Kevin Rudd is still there. and that I think Kevin Rudd will probably stay there too. Now, though, Trump says he doesn't like him. Rudd said he doesn't like him either. Okay, big deal. I don't think Trump will ever meet with Rudd. He didn't know who he was either. He said, it's just, fancy being so ill-informed that you don't even know who the ambassador of Australia is, what he looks like, and whether he was sitting in front of you or not. The stupidity of this thing is just amazing. But nevertheless, it goes on to say, Trump will be mad Australia hasn't spent more on defence. The president waved it away. You can only do so much. So the issue around defence clearly was raised. And then Trump goes into this business about how much he's been able to encourage Europeans and NATO to spend as much money as they have. He wouldn't even know how much Australia spends on defence. He'd have trouble trying to find out where we are in the Pacific anyway. And doesn't understand anything about geopolitics, doesn't understand anything about geographics. And he was asked about whether or not we would be involved if there was a battle with Taiwan. The Trump response to all of this shit is, she is a friend of mine. There are some things we disagree with, but she is a friend of mine. Well, that is bullshit. He's not a friend of yours whatsoever. You're attacking him with unbelievable tariffs, and there's no way in the world that she would consider you a friend. He considers you as an adversary, quite frankly. But Trump, because he's a clown, he believes, so at some level, Trump must believe that if I say something good about somebody, I will get something good in return. So even that is transactional for Trump. But when it doesn't happen, he gets very annoyed, frustrated, and it does everything he can to punish them. That's just the way he is. So it goes on to say, AUKUS, painted by some critics as imperiled by an ongoing Pentagon review, was not only thoroughly praised by Trump, but endorsed to move faster. And that was a critical element too, because really the reality is that it probably won't move any much faster than what it is. But Trump knows nothing about it anyway, so it makes sense that Trump would say that it's going to move faster than it actually is, and that we will get the subs on time, because Trump doesn't understand anything about the fact that they're really short of their own vessels and that they can't make them fast enough, let alone making something for us. And at the end of the day, maybe Trump does understand that this is about ripping us off. We're a small country, who gives a crap? Well, he doesn't. Because he doesn't, the reality is Trump doesn't care about anybody but himself anyway, so why would he care about a not so small country, but a small country in terms of population, but an important country because we're situated in the Pacific and we're an ally to them. But Trump wouldn't understand that because he doesn't understand geopolitical issues. He's got no idea whatsoever. Okay, so a major critical agreement will see billions of US investment pumped into Australia, the deal signed by the two leaders since she took back. Much will be made of Trump telling Australian Ambassador Kevin Rudd, perhaps jokingly or theoretically, I don't like you, or he doesn't know him, so what the heck. Or even if the president later drew a line under the non-scandal by saying all is forgiven. And I believe that they met. The rumour is that Trump and Rudd met later, and Rudd apologised for the statements he'd made in the past. So JP says, and so true. And yeah, I think this is a real issue. Is why do we focus so much on United States politics? I tend to focus on a lot for a number of reasons. Number one, I find it fascinating. If there was someone else in power, Obama, Biden, and others, I wouldn't be. I don't think I'd be just as interested because business would just continue as usual. But as my wife keeps saying to me, what sort of people what sort of people support this character? You know, like, who are you Americans? If any Americans, I don't know if any Americans are online. There's quite a few people here at the moment, but I don't know if any Americans are online. But, you know, can you explain to me why you support these people? It's crazy. You know, and the No Kings rally on the weekend was an indication that there's at least 7 million people out of 135 who object to what's happening in the United States in a whole range of areas, because there is this move by Donald Trump to endorse himself as a king. No disputing any of that. It is, so I like this comment too. It is a, this is a good point. See if I can bring this up. Clear that one. It is an honour to be disliked by Trump. Thanks, whoever it is. I don't know your first name. Also, could you please let me know where you come from, like just your state, if you're in Australia or if you're from another country. Let us know that as well. Is because it is. I don't know what you mean. So I don't know what you mean. We focused on the US because it is something. I think that's a misspelling. And new opposition leader with spunk. Her name is. I don't know what that is. You become my grandfather as my right wing squad. Okay, I'm going to put that one up. Right. See if that one comes up. Tony, I kindly request you become my grandfather as my right-wing Sky News watching grandfather is driving me crazy. How do I deal with him? There's a great story my kids and my wife will tell. Was years ago when we used to have, I don't have, I do have access to Sky News, but I usually watch it on the podcast, on YouTube. But there was a time when when cable television first, well, a little while after, but cable television was pretty new, and we had cable television, and I would watch Fox News, and I'd watch particularly the Bill O'Reilly show, and every time, and so the kids would say, "We wonder why you're so mad," and only because I would sit there yelling at Bill O'Reilly because he was just a right wing nutter, and he'd say the most bizarre things, and so I found it entertaining to watch, and I still do to this very day. I think it's entertaining to watch Sky News just make an absolute balls up of everything, and you know, like those clips I just showed you from John's show, that you know, that they do say crazy and bizarre things, and I just wonder, you know, how can anybody argue that anything that Trump says actually makes sense? Let alone say that he's a god and that is the second coming. You know, it's like, you know, what is this? There's something infectious about this notion that that they're so desperate in the United States to find themselves a savior, and maybe they need to find themselves a savior because they're so fucked, basically, that there's something's happening in this country that makes them want to find a savior, someone who has miracle powers, who can walk on water, change water into wine, which all the alcoholics would love, and who can heal the sick, do amazing things. So they're looking at, you know, Charlie Kirk. You know, Charlie Kirk became the savior at one point, a misogynistic hater of coloured people. He became, you know, terrible thing, he died, but he was one of those. So they're looking for the worst possible person they can find, who has blemishes all over them, and they make excuses for that person so that person can then be their leader and be their savior. And is this because they don't have anyone that they can believe in enough to help them with whatever they think they need help with, you know? And, you know, Obama did many things that I think were wrong, but at least attempting to get universal health care was a plus. And but he was berated over and over for that. At the moment, the Republican Party have decided that they're going to close the country down for a while and blame the Democrats for that because they won't, because of the cuts that they'll get to Medicaid. Because they want the cuts, and of course the Democrats don't. So when you're looking at who's right and who's wrong, there's definitely, and this is a really frustrating point. I don't want to carry on about this too long. Why is it that one can see what one side is doing that is blatantly unfair, undemocratic, that is demonstrating a sense of inequality, that is denigrating other people, particularly the most vulnerable people in our community? One side is doing all of that, and the other side is just sitting back. And this is a frustrating point, I think, about United States politics. But the other side is sitting back doing bugger all. Really hoping, I think, that at the end of the day, this will all sort itself out and they should be able to sweep into power in the midterms because everybody's just so sick of Trump and the administration. I think that's a terrible way to be working. The No Kings, you know, the other interesting thing for me, I just want to go back to the No Kings rally. The No Kings rally was really quite fascinating because not only did they have perhaps one of the largest group of rallies, largest number of people that have ever turned out for organised rallies in the United States history, they also were lambasted by the right wing by saying that this is going to be all hate. This is a hate rally, right? And then when they show videos of, you know, a group of people dancing, which I've seen 1,000 times, you know, then they mock those people. But those people weren't fighting in the streets. There was no Antifa, right? and so it just fascinates me how we could construe this shit to a point whereby we can't say at the end of the day, wasn't it great that no one got arrested, that there weren't any fights in the streets, and that everything was fine? Why can't we just celebrate that and say that is fantastic? That is the way it should be. You know, don't have to agree with the purpose of the rally or whatever, but that is a good rally. People had fun. They enjoyed it. They held up their placards. At the end of the walk, there were speeches. Don't have to agree with those speeches either, but people were well behaved. And you compare that to the immigration rallies in Australia, where on Sky News, and I think other networks as well, to be fair to Sky, the focus was on what happened in Melbourne. Now, there were other rallies around Australia, but particularly some clowns threw some rocks, attacked the police, and did some terrible things. And that was the counter rally, pro-Palestinian rally, and I find that shameful. I do. The United States, with all its flaws, was able to hold a stack of rallies around the country with almost half the population of Australia, and those rallies were good, well attended, and everybody behaved themselves. But at the anti-Israel rallies or the pro-Palestinian rallies, some clowns decided to act like dickheads and presented the media. And this is the problem. No Antifa in the United States, according to those rallies. In Australia, though, the impression could be completely different because there were people acting violently towards the police. And the police are right to stand up against what has happened. I'm not suggesting that it's just Alan's fault necessarily, because how do you control those people? But it isn't a good look for Australia either. And those people who decide that they're going to be violent at these rallies needs to grow up, and we certainly need to find ways to get rid of them so that it doesn't happen again. Because there will come a time when innocent people will be hurt. And certainly there will come a time, if this continues, where the police will respond inappropriately and other people will be hurt. It will happen, I can assure you. Paul asked, what's wrong with Antifa? Well, actually, Paul, to be honest, there's nothing wrong with being anti-fascist. I did a post, I don't know whether you saw it, I did a post a week or so ago where I declared actually that I was Antifa. That the reality is that I'm the chief executive officer for Antifa. We have a building in which we're housed. We're clearly well armed. In Australia, because we're not allowed to have guns, we're well armed with rocks, apparently, as it turned out on the weekend. But we're an extremely powerful organisation, influencing what the media puts, all that sort of crap. I'm not, but Antifa, the idea about this notion around Antifa is a joke to a large extent. It's fermented by right-wing conspiracy theorists who would also believe in space lasers creating fires in California and pedophiles occupying pizzas in the United States. So and this is the other thing. Why is it that these conspiracy theories and these ideas become so dominant? What is there that drives them? It's like the fact that they're seeing Trump as a king and the saviour for everybody is a bizarre notion in itself. Why can't you look at this man and say, there's no way in the world he's anything that resembles a king. He's more like the devil, so why not see him as the devil rather than the king? Why is it that we have to have a belief? If there was someone in the Labor Party who behaved like Donald Trump, I would not vote Labor. In fact, I must confess, on many occasions I voted Green. But if there was a leader that was behaving in the way that Donald Trump, and that person's getting lots and lots of support from the population, then I'd be very concerned about that. It's just like the same reason why I'm concerned about Pauline Hanson and One Nation having the power that they have, or the proposed power in terms of their increase on the vote from 6.6% to 12%, because all these people are moving from the Liberal Party to One Nation. And what is it that you see in Pauline Hanson, most inarticulate person on this planet, even worse than Trump? What are you seeing in her that would inspire you to want to vote for One Nation? She was asked a question. She often, she appears a lot on Sky News because Sky News must present this propaganda from One Nation. And she was asked about Barnaby Joyce joining them. And she said, and she got really, when she was asked whether, Barnaby Joyce is 56, she's 72. The speculation was that she's going to leave, and that Barnaby Joyce was going to come in, stand in the party, win a seat in the Senate, and then take over the party. Well, Pauline was not happy. Not happy, Jan. I can tell you now. She put an end to that one real quick. She just said, "Look, I'm quite fit and healthier." She basically said, "I'm fit and healthier than what Barnaby Joyce is. That I'm going to stay here for long. There's no way in the world, Pauline's not going to give up this power trip, no matter what happens. I can assure you." So Pauline has decided that she's staying, and was really insulted by the idea that Barnaby Joyce may enter the party to take over. It just dropped down, broken. So in relation to Trump, no, get rid of that one. Take up this one. What's wrong with... I can't get it. I don't know why. This thing sometimes doesn't work as it should. So someone said here, it's the cult of personality, which it is. So I like that. It's a quiet day. It's a quiet day on Sky. It's a quiet day on Sky when Pauline does not turn up. She's there. I don't know if people watch, but she's there almost every night, I think. And there is no doubt that Pauline Hanson is the most unarticulate person you could imagine. And the fascinating thing when you hear Pauline speak is that she offers all these criticisms. We should have net zero. We shouldn't have net zero. There's too many foreigners. She said it so many times. I said in my first speech that we'd be careful about all those people coming. The people she was speaking about were Asians, and she identified them. When Senator Price mentioned the Indian people coming into Australia, she got canned for that. And I just think that the same thing would happen. The same thing would happen today if Pauline actually identified these people that she doesn't like, all those coloured and brown people, and those people that belong to other religions apart from Christians people. So she just is woeful. And then I was listening to Barnaby today on his. He did a presentation which went on forever on the ABC, and he speaks. Even I reckon he and Pauline could have a run for the largest amount of turds that they can spout at any given time, because they're both just as bad as each other, and it's painful. It's painful to watch because, and if this is the best that Sky News can offer, the best that One Nation can offer, then I don't think we need to worry too much about One Nation's power or influence in this country, because they will never have any. And it's just an aspiration. That's all it is. Nothing else. It will never, ever become reality. So what I wanted to talk about also is this particular issue. So the coalition showdown on net zero looms amid speculation more MPs could quit over policy. So there is this other thing going on. I don't know if you're aware of this, but in Australia, we have an opposition party to the Labor Party. It's hard to imagine, I know, and it seems so unreal, but we do. And in this particular case, it is the Liberal National Party. They're a joint ticket at the moment, not for long, I suspect. But meeting calls for an end of sitting week invitation backbench MPs to argue for or against dumping the policy after Barnaby Joyce announced resignation. So the issue for the Liberal Party and the National Party is that the National Party, according to Barnaby Joyce, have moved further to the centre, and the Liberal Party have become more moderate because they believe that net zero is the right wing, the extreme right wing. Barnaby Joyce and Pauline Hanson believe that the net zero is just the way to go, and while the Liberal Party are sitting on the bench wondering what they should do about that. So what has this resulted in? Well, coalition backbenchers are preparing for a showdown on net zero as pressure mounts on Susan Lee's opposition to resolve its position, because they don't have one right at this moment. With speculation, more MPs could join Barnaby Joyce in quitting if the policy isn't dumped. So there was some talk, don't know whether they mentioned here or not, there's some talk of about 7 Liberal politicians moving over to One Nation. Liberal and National MPs have been invited to remain in Canberra after the upcoming sitting week of a 3-hour closed-door debate on energy policy, including net zero by 2025. Guardian Australia understands most Nationals MPs won't be able to attend next Friday's meeting due to a diary clash. Oh, that's so sad. The meeting is designed to settle a final position, but rather give backbench MPs an opportunity to argue their case for or against retaining a target that was originally agreed under Joyce and Scott Morrison's leadership in 2021. So the interesting part of that is that originally Barnaby Joyce with Morrison thought that a target to net zero was reasonable, and now because he's in dispute with the Little Proud, Barnaby Joyce has decided that it might be best for him to bail out. So it's a mess. They will never, as long as they're this divided, the Liberal Party will never ever gain power again. Barnaby is resigning. Incidentally, Trevor Barnaby is resigning from his seat, but he probably will stand for the Labor Party, for someone else, or as an independent, come for a Senate seat, I would guess. And JP's asked, how will One Nation deal with China? Okay. Well, we need to say that, One Nation wouldn't be too happy with China, would they? Because they look different to white Caucasian individuals. And as a result of that, they would probably be banned from coming here. And also, all their Chinese students and the amount of money that universities make from fees would be eradicated. And it would affect the growth in this country as a result of all that, and so on and so forth. So One Nation would, but I think the thing that we need to focus on here is that One Nation will never, ever be in a position to be able to define what our immigration system should look like. If Barnaby does end up running the One Abomination Party, I'd be entertaining at least. You're not wrong, PWR. So let us know what you think about all of that. Please remember to subscribe to my channel. Ring the bell for further notifications. I'm doing another live feed, usually with Avery, if he's up to it, on Thursday. Let us know what sort of subjects, too, you would like us to talk about. I just pick stuff that I think is relevant. It's also talking about stuff that you think is relevant. There's lots of other stuff that could be talked about: education, child protection system, the justice system, whether it works or not, whether there should be changes in terms of Aboriginal affairs, what will those changes look like. So there's lots of social issues that we could be talking about. We could be talking about what's other stuff overseas, such as what's happening in the UK in relation to the book written by Guilford recently, and how Prince Andrew is faring right at this very point in time. So there's lots of stuff we could be talking about, and more than happy to do so. Apart from choosing some of the stuff I've got here. So if in the comments section you give us some ideas and some sense about that, that would be absolutely fabulous. In the meantime, everyone, just take care and make sure that you look after yourselves.